and then
welcome. It's the Bob and Emil Show. It's Friday night. We're recording this for you. So, and Emil, how are you? Emil Kadlec, publisher at Fantasy Sports Publication and the chief cook and bottle washer at footballdiehards.com. How are you this fine evening, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a fun week. A little tired, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
And I'm Bob Harris. I'm the senior editor at footballdiehards.com, and I just fixed that headline that said Bell was off the injury report. We all know it was James Conner. Sometimes you're writing the next one while you should be writing the last one. So anyhow, coming off a Thursday night game, Green Bay Packers dropped a close decision to Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, and that seems to be the issue for Green Bay is they're not as good on the road, and by not as good, I mean they're winless on the road. That said, as long as you weren't playing, let's say, Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Jimmy Graham, and you were sticking with Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, you're pretty happy. What do you do with the Packers going forward, Emil?
Well, yeah, the young two rookie receivers have a lot of talent. They look good. They make some nice catches, but they're getting some targets, but they're just not putting the numbers up you need. So, you know, it's Davante Adams, 12 targets, 10 catches, 166 yards, even without the touchdown, an excellent PPR game. So, you know, obviously Aaron Jones has taken over at the running situation. They're running a little more. Aaron Rodgers still viable. But those two rookies, and of course, you just lost Graham, or potentially lost him for several games.
Broken thumb looks, you know, and, you know, too early to have a definitive number, but people out there speculating 4 to 6 weeks, which is essentially the rest of the season for him.
Yeah, so that kind of adds another thing on top. They've got some depth at tight end, not great depth, although they did score a long touchdown to like the third or fourth guy on the depth chart at tight end. But yeah, it looks like, well, the good thing is, you know, Aaron Jones and Davante Adams are very good players. So if you got them, you know, they're working well. How long is Randall Cobb going to be out, and will he, you know, take some away from that, especially from the rookies?
Right, and that's, you know, that's going to be the problem. And maybe they're a little better at home. I do love what Aaron Jones is doing. I mean, he's looked fantastic. If you look at some of the numbers, I mean, you know, for running backs with over 150 carries going into this game, last night's game, he was number 1 in yards per carry ever in the history of the game, ahead of guys like Bo Jackson, ahead of guys like Jamal Charles.
Wow.
So yeah, it's over 6 yards a carry. Pretty impressive early run. We've kind of been considering him the more explosive threat. The problem was he wasn't getting the workload. Look, he's still not getting the workload you'd like to see, right? I mean, you'd like more than 15 carries a game on
starting to catch the ball a little more too, right, which helps.
And he is capable of catching the ball. And I do think that, you know, when you look at the, you know, what do you have? 16 total touches, so only 11 carries. He had the 1 touchdown run, which was pretty good, only 3.6 yards to carry. Jamal Williams had 5. Oh, it was just 1 carry. My bad. Yeah, that's a bit of a, what are we doing with the running back situation in Seattle? Look, I watched this. You're watching this game. You know, I had a lot of questions yesterday on the Sirius show on Twitter about, you know, what do we do with these running backs? Well, you play Chris Carson first because he's the starter, right? And I mean, I think that's the thing we're going to see with Phillip Lindsay now that Royce Freeman's back. I mean, it's a hot hand situation, and you play the starter. We've seen what Rashad Penny, the rookie running back, is capable of. Mike Davis seems to kind of be moving into that third down back territory, maybe the late game kind of guy. But we saw Penny break off that long run. We saw him the week before have a great game. The long run, 80 yards of actual territory covered according to Next Gen Stats. It was like a 30-plus yard run. What are you doing with these guys?
Yeah, I obviously, if it appears that if Carson's healthy, he's probably going to get enough. He's going to get enough carries. He's going to be viable. You know, this Penny guy, he's looking pretty good the last couple of weeks. So he may start stealing some time from Carson, even if Carson is healthy. Although I think you're still okay there. But if Carson goes down, which happens, maybe Penny may be the better handcuff at this point, if Carson does go down. But if he doesn't go down, Penny's not going to help you, I don't think.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. It's going to be a tough slog. I mean, we're going to be wanting to play guys that are going to end up disappointing us or surprising us at some point. So yeah, we'll be playing all those guys going forward. I wanted to talk about another situation that we'll be dealing with this week, likely right up through kickoff. Is we're not going to know likely who Baltimore's starting quarterback is. It's maybe get out there in the ether somewhere at some point. But right now, it looks like Joe Flacco's doubtful with a hip injury, didn't practice all week. So almost certainly won't play in this one. That leaves Lamar Jackson, the promising rookie first-round pick, Robert Griffin III, a guy that's been around a little bit. We haven't seen much positive out of him on the field in the few times we've seen him since his heyday in Washington. Lamar Jackson missed a day of practice this week with a stomach issue. That's a little concern. When you're a rookie quarterback and you're heading into your first start, you want all the reps you can get. So that might be a little concern. But I guess the bigger question here is, you're probably not going to play either of these guys. It's a phenomenal matchup, right? The Bengals defense, 500 yards a game like each of the last 2 games. Still pretty beat up injury-wise. The other side of the ball, they won't have A.J. Green again. That didn't work out well for them last week against the Saints. They're playing the Ravens, who've been a little up and down, but for the most part, a pretty tough defense, got some playmakers. So what are you doing with guys like Michael Crabtree, John Brown, and Willie Snead? Do you feel like you need to dial them back, or since we're in Bye-Mageddon 2, the last 16 bye of the season, maybe you're in such a pinch you're going to play them, or are you just holding your nose and doing what you have to, or are you looking for other options?
Yeah, I mean, if sometimes you're in a bad situation. This week we got 6 bye teams, and you're maybe stuck to playing guys. I don't really think Lamar Jackson's ready. So I think that you got to try and say, okay, what can he do out there? Obviously, he's going to run a little bit. Maybe he's going to throw short, which may make Snead still viable. I mean, you can't. I mean, maybe you'll still have a Brown that'll still run. Brown's strength is running deep, and I just think that would be more of the weakness, and maybe that hurts him a little bit unless they adjust their offense and have him running different kind of routes.
Or maybe you get the next Nick Mullins. And Lamar Jackson, a different guy. Look, the athleticism there, I think one of the things Mike Dempsey and I were talking about on the Sirius XM Football Diehards show this very evening is, I think the play here is Alex Collins. You've got to lay down defense. And look, we don't know what Ty Montgomery's going to do yet. Maybe that's something we have to watch, tomorrow and heading into Sunday's game to see if we get indications he's going to get more of the workload. But you look at that and like when they do the run pass options, those opposing defenders are going to have to worry about Lamar Jackson's athleticism. Yeah. And that maybe opens things up. They're going to have a hard time committing to Alex Collins, and maybe he gets those balls. I think that's the play I'm looking to make this week, and I'll probably make it in DFS. He's a reasonably priced DFS option, by the way. What is he? 4,800 on draft, or no, it's 4,400 on DraftKings, 6,000 on FanDuel. So reasonably priced option going horrible defense, and maybe a game that sets up for him.
Well, that's an excellent point. I mean, maybe that's going to be the running backs that are going to get the opportunity, especially like you said, if they do some, if they're looking at Lamar to run, and then all of a sudden he hands it off to somebody in a different direction, and bing bong, they're going to do well. Cincinnati's got, they're playing in Baltimore. Cincinnati's just falling apart. So it all makes sense. It's just going to be difficult with. Lamar,
right? We want certainty. We want as much certainty as we can get. In this case, we're not going to get any until kickoff. And even then, even when we have some certainty, there's going to be some uncertainty because we don't know exactly what to expect. We've seen Lamar Jackson as as that wildcat kind of quarterback. Basically, they brought him in, they bring him in to run, and things like that. We haven't seen Robert Griffin for quite some time, and when we did see him, it wasn't great, right? Yeah. So I don't know what the expectations are with him.
Yeah, Mullins had a couple of years to prepare and learn the offense. Where Jackson's had half a year in preseason, and I just don't think he's there to pull a Mullins. Mullins played against Oakland that first game, and now that Baltimore's at home playing against Cincinnati, who's fallen apart, that helps. But I think you've got a good analysis of this game as far as the running backs being the strongest play.
Yeah, and we'll see it maybe on both sides of the ball for that matter. You know, for Joe Mixon now that he's off the injury report. Let's talk about another running back that we're all interested in, and we've gotten some positive. You know, we've seen a positive trend for Mr. David Johnson in Arizona. Byron Leftwich has taken over as a play caller. We've seen a 2-game sample now. The last game was against Kansas City. We saw touchdowns, we saw catches, we saw runs not at the center's ass. You know, I mean, I think we're seeing a little more creativity and maybe not even creativity, because I mean, a complaint against Mike McCoy, the former offensive coordinator, is he comes in with a phone book. And, you know, it's not like his offense is not innovative or not thoughtful or whatever. It's just too moody, too much.
Yeah.
And they pared it down clearly. The focus on getting David Johnson the ball. Do you like him this week going against the Oakland? Let's rephrase that. How much do you like him this week going against the Oakland Raiders, who appear to be toothless on both sides of the ball?
Well, we had 98 yards last year, last week, rushing a touchdown, 9 targets, 7 catches, 85 yards and a touchdown. That adds up to a whole heck of a lot of fantasy points.
Yes.
You know, I think over 20 is a good chance, but, you know, to expect him to repeat last week is probably asking a bit much. But, man, looking at this box score reminds me of last year. And last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago. And 2 years ago was pretty damn good. I'm really glad to see them target him that much. And it, you know, looks like they're doing it in a smart way. And still got a young quarterback. But, you know, I think he's definitely a startable guy. You know, don't get too crazy about it, predicting him to have a game like he did against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think he's going to perform as a wide receiver, an RB1, you know, in the rest of this year, depending on the
I agree with that. One of the things you like about it is that they brought him in. So one of the problems, or some of the problems he had under Mike McCoy, was he missed assignments, blocking assignments, routes. He just, I mean, it's a complicated scheme apparently. So when they make the switch to Byron Leftwich, who, you know, learned his play calling, you know, learned at the side of Bruce Arians, who had great success with David Johnson. So we like that. But they also brought David Johnson in and said, hey, what do you want to run? Right? And so, you know, there's issues on the offensive line. They need to get him the ball in space. They'll continue to do that. I know we talked to Mike Jurecki from the team's website this week. I think he didn't have the exact numbers, but his feeling was they've run more screens in the last 2 weeks than they did in the first half of the season combined. It's just they weren't running a lot of screen passes, so they're maximizing his ability. Love this matchup this week. I'm playing him as much as I can. He's not an overpriced DFS play either, by the way, so consider that. So yeah, great game for him. And look, I think this week, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, and maybe Ricky Seals-Jones, all maybe viable plays as you try to figure out how to field entire lineups. If you're like me, I play in about 25 plus season-long leagues. And I normally go through my lineups and set them within an hour and a half. This week it took me 3 to not set any lineups. I was out making waiver claims. Yeah, it was a
because of the buys, yeah.
Right, for the buys, I was out making waiver wire moves instead of making lineups, and I've still got some lineups to revisit. So hopefully I don't have to use too much Ricky Seals-Jones, but you never know. So Pittsburgh, it's done. Le'Veon Bell's season is officially over. He did not report by the Tuesday 4 p.m. deadline, so he has foregone this year of football in hopes of cashing in, making a huge payday, preserving himself, whatever. I don't get the strategy. It's not my strategy. I don't have to get it. What I do get is James Conner came in and basically made every argument for why Pittsburgh handled this like why they do, right? So he's come in. He's been hugely successful, has, you know, handled the workload, been productive, scored more touchdowns, done all the things you want him to do. Maybe it is the offensive line. Maybe it is the scheme. Whatever it is, he's working. So you've been relying on him very happily. But we get into this point now where we're heading into the stretch run of the season, and we start working on our rosters. And what we want to do is we want to shed depth and kind of concentrate. And that means maybe, you know, garnering our handcuffs. If we're looking at James Conner, who is our handcuff? Is there? Could you say it's Stephen Ridley? Could you say it's Jalen Samuels? It's probably both. Is it as easy as splitting it PPR and standard? How would you approach this one?
it's a very frustrating situation because last game Ridley had 8 carries, Samuels had 5. Samuels did get targeted 4 times and caught 3 catches, which helps. Ridley only 1 time and he didn't catch the ball. I wish I knew. I mean, I think they'd be tempted to try Samuels out because they've drafted him and they like him. Or Ridley's been around the league for a long, long time. But then again, you could say, wait a minute, he's got the experience. He's not going to make mistakes. But I'd probably lean Samuels as the handcuff because you're going to have to probably don't have room to keep them all. But it's not black and white, that's for sure.
Yeah, my hunch is leads with yours, and Mike Tomlin maybe gave us a little bit of a clue this week when he talked about Samuel saying the arrow is pointing up, or maybe that's an anti-clue. If the arrow is pointing up, he has a ways to go. But my feeling is, as a receiver back, and they throw the ball a fair amount to their backs, I think he gives you that little bit of wiggle. So if it was a PPR, certainly that would make it a little easier to go Samuels. I'd probably go Samuels either way if I can only have one. And hope they try to get the young guy that they invested in, as you said. So that brings us to some other players. There's a couple clear-cut handcuffs, and I think the one that's probably the most appealing, and maybe a guy you want to get just to keep the hunt owner in your league, the cream hunt owner, is Spencer Ware, who was basically the guy the Chiefs pinned their future on until he was hurt, and then they had to pivot, and that's when we saw Kareem Hunt. Wow, he's fantastic. So. But Spencer Ware seems like a guy that would come in and be a plug-and-play kind of at least workload, if not production. So let's throw him out of the mix, and let's say go out and proactively get him, especially if you want to screw over the hunt owner or at least block him from doing that. Ezekiel Elliott, a clear handcuff, and Rod Smith. Not as comfortable in what he's capable of doing with the workload.
Not really. I mean, these guys are great talents. He's not, but if you're going into this second half of the season and looking into the playoffs, it may be important to get this Rod Smith because if you lose, your number 1 running back in Elliott, at least you have a chance to get, 60, 70% of that or whatever because, he's the clear-cut guy, like you said, and you don't, you're trying to cover your bases going into this type of the season, and he's been quiet, so he's probably available with most of the leagues. So,
right, last year was a 50-50 proposition. It was he and Alfred Morris both, and you didn't know who you're going to get. And then kind of Morris usurped the role to a large degree. But I think this year would obviously be different because there's nobody else there, so that makes that pretty easy. A little trickier with guys that are even higher end backs at this moment. Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon. In Melvin Gordon's case, I mean, I guess it'd be Austin Eckler. Justin Jackson's there, the rookie, but Eckler has been pretty much locked in. Has not been really that impressive when he's gotten the opportunities to handle the primary role. Would you feel confident enough, though, if you were a Gordon owner, to have him as a handcuff?
I think I would. I think I would. He played pretty good last year. He looked pretty good in preseason. If Gordon went down and he got the most carries and whatnot, I still feel good about him. I think I definitely want to get him on my team if you can, because Gordon has had injuries, and he's a big back, an important back to your team, and you'd want to have that handcuff. I think personally, even though he hasn't performed incredible.
I think you would obviously dial back expectations and maybe a plug-and-play workload, not the plug-and-play production. Not what we're getting from. I talked to Eric Williams from ESPN earlier this week, and he was, just lauding what Gordon has done in terms of just how hard he's running. He said that, look, if they weren't both in Los Angeles, we'd be talking a hell of a lot more about Melvin Gordon. He's just overshadowed by Todd Gurley, who is the other guy we're going to talk about here. And I guess, Malcolm Brown is the guy that comes to mind because he's the guy we see, but John Kelly is also there, the rookie. If you had to handcuff, if you were a Gurley owner, would it be Brown right now, just kind of by default?
I think you'd have to go with Brown, but if, let's say, Gurley did go down for several weeks, maybe they start playing Kelly a little bit, 25% of the carries, and if he starts doing well, rookie running backs, he may take that. But, Brown's played pretty well in his spots, so I think you got to go with him unless you got room for 2, which would be a lot.
Right. Receiver Brown has proven to be, basically receiving back, and that job has become a receiving job to a large degree. rely heavily, Sean McVay does, on the running back as a receiver. And you know, one of the things that kind of you want to entertain or keep in the back of your mind is just like, you know, talking to local observers in New York, talking about Eli Manning's future, and you know, who would be the guy that comes in if they decided to pull the plug on Manning. And short term, it would be Alex Tanney. Long term, it would be Kyle Lauletta, the rookie, most likely, assuming he's not in jail that week or hasn't tried to run over any patrolmen. But yeah, so, you know, there may be circumstances where, you know, there's a short-term replacement and a long-term replacement. I'm not thinking that's the case with Brown and Gurley. It's something you'd have to watch. I think I'm with you right now. You have to go with Malcolm Brown. He's the obvious choice because he's the guy getting the playing time. So that makes it difficult. All right, we got some good games coming up, Emil.
Yeah.
Some super good games. Sunday night game is they flexed the Minnesota Vikings at Chicago into the Sunday night game. Mitchell Trubisky's been playing lights out. I mean, you know, for some reason I've got the blind spot for him, and then you go look at the numbers and you think, damn, man, I've got a blind spot because it's not like he just, you know, he's on a steady roll. How confident are you in him in this particular matchup against the Vikings? They're getting a little better ever since Griffin back. They've got some great defensive players. Xavier Rhodes will be locked up on Allen Robinson a fair amount, but Anthony Miller's a player on the rise. Trey Burton, a player you can play every week. Solid gadget backs and gadget receiver, and Tariq Cohen and Taylor Gabriel, respectively. You know, Jordan Howard's been a bit of a disappointment, but he's had his moments, and maybe isn't as bad as people think. You know, maybe the expectation was just is what set you up for that disappointment. So how do you feel this offense stacks up this week, and who do you like? Who would you be playing?
Wow, it's you know, through the year right now, if you just look at Minnesota's give-ups at running back, they're the 11th best team in not giving up, so they're fairly high up, and they're number 4 against wide receivers, which is interesting. So, but tight ends, they're 17th, so Trey Burton may be a good one. Now, as you know, these are year-to-date stats, so if they've got certain guys back, sometimes they can be lies. So Trey Burton's a good pick, and Chicago is like 20th in holding back receiver fantasy points. So you got Thielen and Diggs are good plays. Now, you know, Cooks you know, he looked pretty good last week. He had that long run, and I know, you know, Chicago's number 3 against running backs, but he catches the ball too. So yeah, Cooks may be a good play.
I think he's going to be a solid play. I think that's what they want to do. They want to rely on him. They'd like to not expose Kirk Cousins to this pass rush. Khalil Mack's been pretty good at that, and others there, obviously. They've got some pretty solid coverage guys, though. I think it could be a little tougher for those wide receivers than maybe some pass games. I think they've got the whole range covered, the perimeter guys and the slot corner. So, you know, that's been Adam Thielen's big advantage in the games where he's really excelled. You know, the one game he did without Stephon Diggs, he worked on the outside a little more. But when they can run him out of the slot, and we'll talk about this throughout the season, is, you know, when you can get these bigger receivers working out of the slot, the defenses haven't caught up with this yet for the most part. The slot corners tend to be a little overmatched. So, I mean, look, you're not sitting any of these guys in season long, and by these guys, I mean Thielen, Diggs, Dalvin Cook, Allen Robinson. You know, maybe you consider your options. I call him the Jordan Howard of wide receivers. You need that 2-touchdown game, right? But look, I mean, going against Xavier Rhodes, it's been tough. He played him once before, I think, when he was in Jacksonville. I think he was held to 1 catch or something. But look, these are different times, and I think this is more for DFS conversation where you have some options. I think in season long we're talking about, oh, would you fade this guy? No, there are 6 teams on bye. I can't fade anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
You're playing and hoping for the best. But I think in DFS you can make reasonable arguments for backing off guys like you can back off Allen Robinson for sure. And I'd maybe push Anthony Miller a little more, and maybe for the price he's a little better play. He's come on the last 2 games. He's been solid. He seems to be a player on the rise. Trey Burton, I think, is don't like the ceiling, but I like the floor. I haven't seen, the high-end production. But Mitchell Trubisky, I could play him just about every week right now. I think he's crossed that point, right?
He has. This is a tough matchup. They are at home. That'll help if Minnesota's a little more healthy on defense. But yeah, again, you're early in the season. He was making a lot of mistakes. He does run the ball nicely, which helps. Throws a little sugar on top. And I've got a league that I have Rivers, and I've been starting Rivers, and like you said, I finally looked at the stats yesterday. I'm like, Trubisky's outplaying him the last few games, and I'm starting Rivers. So it's like the same thing you're saying. Maybe it's time for me to take that security blanket and throw it in the trash and put Trubisky in.
Week 4, 47 points. Week 6, they had to bye week 5, 31 points. Week 7, 36 points. Week 8, 24 points, and that was just a low-scoring affair, basically, against the Jets. Week 9 against Buffalo, only had 10 points, another low-scoring affair. Week 10, last week against Detroit, 37 points, had the 3 touchdowns. I think the 3 passing touchdowns. I think the thing about him is his running ability. He's a lot more athletic than I think maybe people had given him credit for. It's one of the things the Bears liked about him. I think he provides. I think he's a hell of a player. And look, the plan was obvious. Matt Nagy, come on down. We got the coach who was an innovative offensive mind working under Andy Reid, quarterback whisperer himself, trying to copy the success that the people in Los Angeles saw with Jared Goff playing under Sean McVay, a high draft pick who languished under a conservative play caller or conservative head coach and Jeff Fisher. Same situation in Chicago. John Fox doesn't get
that is interesting.
So they bring in the guy, NFL's a copycat league. That's what they do. They try to, and it looks like they've got things in the right direction. Maybe next year will be a huge year for the Bears, but this year ain't bad. For the Vikings, I'd say this, that, Dalvin Cook is going to be very busy. Kyle Rudolph seems like a reasonable play there as well. And you're not, like I said, you're not dialing back and season long on Adam Thielen ever for any reason, or Stephon Diggs for that matter. Which brings us to the Monday night game. The over-under in this game, Emil, 63.5, I believe, right now.
Wow.
What are you taking, the over or the under in this one?
Over. I want points.
Game, right? It's the over every game. Look, we've seen this like last week, like heading into the Thursday night game, the Steelers Panthers, there was a 51-point over-under. The Steelers beat the over.
Yeah.
I think a couple weeks ago was the Packers Patriots, and I mean they crushed. It was a huge over-under. Wow, that's a really high over-under. It got pounded. So I think in this game, look, we know any game can turn into a defensive fest, but if you had to bet your money on this one, I'm betting that over as well. So Pat Mahomes, obviously locked in. He's our number 1 quarterback again this week on our staff rankings, as he has been pretty much every week this season, dating back to September at least, if I'm not mistaken. So then we've got Jared Goff on the other side. I think we rank him, number 3 this week?
Yep.
Yep, the quarterback 3. You've got top running backs on both sides, Todd Gurley, Kareem Hunt. You've got top receivers on both sides. I think Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods both both ranked nearly wide receiver 1s, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly Tyreek Hill is. Travis Kelce, maybe tight end 2. I'm doing this from memory, behind Zach Ertz. So, and look, the Rams tight ends scored a touchdown. Who cares about them guys? It's funny, though, that Sean McVay comes from Washington, where he built a reputation of turning Jordan Reed into this huge, the tight ends were such a factor, and you can't get that going in Los Angeles. Not that we care. It's pretty damn good otherwise.
Yeah. Well, you got you've got, this, you've got Kupp out now, and, you've got Josh Reynolds, who had a good game before Kupp came back. So he may be a sneaky play, especially in DFS. Of course, people know about it, but then again, they're playing Kansas City. They're home now. They're not playing in Mexico. And Goff has been kind of a home guy, but the last 3 weeks he went 27, 32, and 24. And, well, at least the New Orleans game was away, and he scored 32 points there. So, he's just a guy you got to play. But maybe Josh Reynolds is a guy who maybe the sneaky play there in DFS.
4,200 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel. Down there, same price range as Anthony Miller, is a little more expensive on FanDuel, but same price on DraftKings. So I like those. I like both. I like Reynolds as a play as well. Anyone beyond on Kansas City, though, I mean, I think that's the interesting thing. And on the Rams, maybe you could play the tight end. Maybe you could play a Gerald Everett. Maybe you could play a Tyler Higbee.
Well, interesting about, Everett scored a touchdown. You go, oh, good, the last weekend. But you look down, and Higbee scored a touchdown. Higbee got 3 targets, caught 3 for 25. Everett had 2 targets, caught 2, and scored a touchdown. So they almost split, and that's the frustrating part about it. You want to play Everett, but then they're cutting him and Higbee in half.
Does that maybe give you 2 break glass in case of emergencies, guys that maybe aren't named
Certainly, if you're hurting and, you know, given the fact Cup's out, maybe they do go to the tight ends a little more in this game. Because Reynolds
is the guy you're right there. And I think beyond, you know, on the other side of the ball, it's pretty hard to stick, you know, to go to Sammy Watkins, assuming he's going to play, did not practice Friday or was limited, did not practice today, was worked on the day before. We'll find out. Check his website on Saturday and Sunday leading up and Monday night leading up to kickoff to find out if he's playing. But I think even in this offense, I mean, it's Mahomes, it's Hunt, it's Kelsey, and it's Hill.
Yep.
And for all the points they're scoring, the rest of it's been a little bit more hit or miss. I mean, Demetrius Harris, man, I guess if you had to, Chris Conley, nah. Sammy Watkins, he's had big games and still nah. I mean, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, if Watkins is out, I mean, Watkins had a couple big games too, but he's got to be healthy. Let's say he's not in, as we follow the weekend of the league into the weekend. Maybe a Conley or one of those guys, you know, ends up getting something. But there's so much talent on those other places that you just pointed out. It's kind of hard to go with a Conley. It's really a risk.
I think if you're making DFS plays, it's a little easier, you know, to buy low on some of these guys at the lower end of that range. And even Watkins, for me, it's hard to play him every week. But it's great to see these 2 teams playing in a Monday night game. The 2 leading offenses in a season where the points have been abundant. We're setting scoring records every single week. It's been a phenomenal season. NFL is the best thing on the television box every single weekend and every single Monday night and pretty much every Thursday this year. And this week it'll be Sunday night too. So great stuff ahead to look at. We'll wrap this one up. I'll remind everyone to hit the website and check out all the fine content there. If you haven't been downloading Jen Ryan's weekly Excel file for DFS season-long Vegas cheat sheet, you've been doing yourself a disservice. I rely on it heavily. It has all the information you need at your fingertips, multiple tabs, sorted by position in terms of salary, in terms of hit rates on DFS. The Vegas line is great to have and understand and work with. And, of course, tons of other content, whether it's Armando Marsal's DFS articles and other articles. Got Bobby Gomes, the live videos with Armando and Bobby, the podcast with Armando and Bobby, the Millionaire Maker winner, by the way, Bobby Gomes. The Chalk Talk podcast is what they do when they do the after they do the live videos on Thursday night. They record the podcast. They also do a live video on Sunday on the pregame show. Lots of other articles. Me, Gary Davenport, JJ Buck, John Love, David Hunter. Everyone getting it done for you, taking care of business. Brad Cruz with his weekly sit starts on Thursday and Saturday. Check those out for the Thursday and Sunday games. Check me out on the Football Diehards radio program on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio every single weeknight, 6 to 8 p.m. Every Sunday morning, Jeff Mans and I do the SiriusXM pregame show from 11 to 1 p.m. Every Saturday night, Mike Dempsey and I do the SiriusXM NFL radio 3-hour special Football Diehard show every single Saturday night. So tune in for all that. Check back the site Saturday. We'll have the injury overview video that can kind of get you up to speed. Make sure you have everything if you can only hit the site once a week. Check all the articles, all the news, the constant flow of news. We'll run those right up through all your kickoffs, so you'll know all the inactives, any pertinent lineup changes or injury information. So it's all there for you, Emil.
Yeah. Also, you've got, you know, don't hit up that resource tab too. You've got box score, snap dating, a whole bunch of stuff, and the one that is not to be forgotten is the fantasy points allowance, where you can sort running back, tight end, receiver, and it gives you the order either worst to best, so you can get a good feel for, you know, the defenses going against your team, your players.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that because I park on that when I'm writing my weekly DFS 3 and out. That's one of the invaluable tools I use when I'm writing all my work. So check everything out. It's here at footballdiehards.com. Check out on our Facebook and our Twitter at ffdiehards.com. You can find me on Twitter at footballdiehard. Otherwise, have a great week 11. Let's win some money, kick some ass, and take some names. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful.